South Korea's central bank is leading the way for monetary authorities around the world in fighting inflation. It's raised interest rates despite concerns that higher borrowing costs may stifle a fragile economic growth. The Bank of Korea raised its benchmark rate by 25 basis points to 1%. It's the second hike in as many meetings, and Governor Lee Ju-yeol says the central bank may do so again early next year. South Korea was the first major Asian economy to bring up borrowing costs since the pandemic as concerns grow about inflation. Consumer prices there rose 3.2% in October, the highest rate in a decade. GDP is still expected to grow 4% this year, but policymakers are worried that keeping rates low for too long might lead to unsustainable debt levels. Household debt in Asia's fourth largest economy rose to $1.5 trillion in the third quarter. That's more than 100% of GDP. Now, for more, let's go to Jeffrey Halley in Jakarta. He's a senior market analyst for the Asia-Pacific region at OANDA. Welcome back to the program, Jeffrey. Now, as I mentioned, inflation, a major concern for South Korea. But what are the other vulnerabilities for that economy?
Firstly, good afternoon. There is a monsoon going on outside, so we may get some unwanted sound effects. Look, the main risk, I believe, for South Korea is, as you mentioned, the household debt, which is running at 200% of household income at the moment. That may limit interest of how far the Bank of Korea can hike rates into next year. Otherwise, they are facing the same challenges as the rest of the world: rising material costs, supply chain disruptions. But thankfully for South Korea, and one of the reasons it's probably outperformed during the pandemic, is that the export markets it's strongest in technology, automotive, pharmaceuticals, high-end manufacturing have seen strong demand over the last 18 months, and that has shielded the economy. But certainly those inflationary inputs and the household debt will be weighing most on policymakers' minds.
Now, as I mentioned, South Korea pulled the trigger first, but Singapore has also tightened its monetary policies. What makes these two Asian economies different from their peers in the region, which have so far been a lot more dovish?
Yeah, I think part of this reason is that both of these economies are quite wealthy, and they're probably the two most advanced economies ex-Japan within the overall ASEAN or Southeast Asia, North Asia grouping. They also have quite open economies, and they both have similar facing high-tech export manufacturing sectors. So they have quite a few similarities in that respect. And they've also had high levels of consumer debt, and they both suffering from these inflationary inputs. But both of those central banks have had the mandate and the room to move on interest rates faster than the rest of Asia. The rest of Asia, you have to remember, is still emerging from this pandemic. South Korea and Singapore are two of the most vaccinated countries in that region, and so their room for movement is higher, whereas the central banks and the rest of Asia are very much in supporting the economic recovery because of the slow rates of vaccination across the region.
All right, Jeffrey Halley in Jakarta, thank you for the analysis and stay dry.
Thank you very much. Take care.